Hi, I'm Stella. Nice to meet you. Before I tell you my story, kindly tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I like to know where you're from. Now let's dive in. I always thought family was supposed to be your safe place. The one place you didn't have to earn love. Turns out I was wrong. My name's Stella, and I grew up in a house where my voice didn't matter. At least not as much as my sisters. Madison was the golden child. Charming, accomplished, adored. Me. I was the afterthought. At birthdays my gifts were smaller. At Christmas, my seat at the table somehow shifted further from the center each year, until I was practically eating with the kids. At family gatherings no one asked about my life. If I spoke, people's eyes slid past me like I wasn't even in the room. It wasn't always like that. When I was younger my dad used to tell me I was his little fighter. But as Madison's achievements piled up, valedictorian, Ivy League fiancé from an old money family, I started to feel myself shrinking in their eyes. It was as if my worth was being silently measured against hers and I was failing. The final straw came on a Sunday afternoon, the day my life turned upside down. It was my parents' anniversary party. The dining room was buzzing, silver trays of hors d'oeuvres passing from hand to hand. Madison, as usual, was center stage, holding court with her stories about life on the Upper East Side, like she was narrating some glamorous novel. I was pouring myself a drink when I overheard my father in the corner with his attorney. Everything goes to Madison. Keep it airtight. I don't want any challenges after we're gone. I froze. Everything? My chest tightened as I leaned against the counter. My parents had been updating their will, and I wasn't just getting a smaller slice of the pie. I was getting nothing. No inheritance. No recognition. As if I hadn't been their daughter for the last 34 years. That night I confronted my mother in the kitchen. The party noise was muffled by the closed door. Mom, did you know about the will? My voice was shaking. She kept wiping down the counter like she hadn't heard me. It's for the best, Stella. Madison's better with money. My throat burned. Better with money? Or just better? She looked at me then, her expression a mix of pity and irritation. You've always been so sensitive. This is just practical. I left without saying goodbye to anyone. Driving home, the city lights blurred through my tears. It wasn't just about the money. It was about being erased. Officially. For weeks I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about how every family dinner, every ignored phone call, every dismissive glance had been building toward this moment. My quiet removal from the family story. But here's the thing about me. I don't stay invisible forever. They thought they could cut me out of the picture. They had no idea what I was about to do. I didn't confront them again right away. Instead I went quiet. And that quiet made them uneasy. My family was used to me either disappearing or taking their crumbs with a polite smile. But this time I started showing up differently. I stopped agreeing to last-minute family dinners, where I was a background extra to Madison's spotlight. I stopped answering every text within seconds. And when I did reply, my answers were short, clipped, unreadable. I think Madison noticed first. One Thursday afternoon I got a call from her. Hey, I haven't seen you around. Everything okay? Her voice had that sugar-sweet tone she used when fishing for gossip. I'm fine, I said flatly. Just busy. Pause. Busy with what? That was Madison. Always needing to know, always needing to measure herself against me, even if she pretended I wasn't competition. Work, I replied. And a few other things. She laughed lightly, but I could hear the tightness in it. Well, don't be a stranger. Mom says you've been distant. Distant. That was one word for it. Strategic was another. I started digging into the will. Not by confronting them directly but by finding someone who would talk. My father's old secretary Elaine had always liked me. I took her to lunch under the pretense of catching up, and after a glass of wine she let something slip. They changed the trust last year. Your name's not in it anymore. Honestly, Stella, I don't agree with it, but I think your sister pushed for it. The words lodged in my chest. Madison. Of course. I didn't show my anger. Instead I leaned back, smiled faintly and said, interesting. That night I went through my old emails, texts, anything I could find that hinted at family business. Madison had always been sloppy when she felt secure, and sure enough I found traces, half-finished texts about getting Dad to sign off, and an email where she referred to me as a liability. It wasn't enough to challenge the will legally, not yet, but it was proof. Proof that my sister wasn't just passively benefiting. She was actively erasing me. The next family gathering came quicker than I expected. My mother's birthday. Normally, I'd stand near the dessert table, smile when needed, and wait for the night to be over. This time I walked in wearing a bold red dress, the kind that made people turn their heads. I caught Madison's eyes narrowing before she masked it with a grin. "Wow, you look different," she said. "Do I?" I tilted my head. Maybe I finally learned how to take up space. It was subtle, but the air shifted. She knew I was no longer playing my part in the family script. Over dinner, my father mentioned his upcoming board meeting for the family's investment firm, the one Madison was being groomed to take over. I asked a few sharp, informed questions about the firm's quarterly losses. He looked startled. Madison looked rattled. I wasn't there to start a scene. Not yet. But I wanted them to know I was paying attention. When I left that night, I caught Madison watching me from the doorway. There was something in her gaze I hadn't seen before. Uncertainty. For the first time in years, I had her off balance. And I wasn't done yet. It's funny how quickly confidence can crack when you start pulling at the right threads. Madison had always been untouchable. Or at least she thought she was. But I'd found her weak spot. She hated not knowing my next move. I kept my distance for a couple of weeks after Mom's birthday. No calls, no texts. I let the silence do the work for me. And sure enough, people started talking. It began with a call from Aunt Ruth, my father's younger sister. "I probably shouldn't say this," she whispered, "but Madison's been complaining. She says you're acting hostile." Hostile? I laughed under my breath. "For existing?" Ruth sighed. "You didn't hear it from me, but your sister's making it sound like you're unstable. Be careful, Stella. She's persuasive when she wants to be." That was the thing about Madison, she didn't just push people out of the way. She built a narrative around why they deserved to be pushed out. And she was building one about me. If I was going to fight back, I needed more than suspicion and bitterness. I needed proof that would speak louder than her stories. So I turned to the one place Madison never thought I'd look. The company. Our family's investment firm had an impeccable public image, but every business has a shadow side. I started asking questions not to my father but to people lower down. The ones who weren't afraid to talk if you bought them coffee and promised discretion. It took 3 meetings before someone finally slipped. An accounts manager, nervous, mid-50s, admitted there were irregularities in how Madison handled certain accounts. Transfers that didn't make sense. Loans to shell companies that had quietly vanished. I didn't accuse her outright. Not yet. But I made sure word got back to her that I'd been asking questions. That's when she showed up at my apartment. She didn't knock, just walked in like she still had that privilege. "We need to talk," she said, her voice tight. I leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "Do we?" She dropped the smile completely. "What exactly are you doing, Stella? Because this, whatever game you're playing, it's not going to work." I almost laughed. "Game? I'm just catching up on family business. You know, the kind I was cut out of." Her eyes narrowed. "You were cut out for a reason. You can't handle responsibility." There it was, the same line I'd heard my whole life, just dressed up in different words. I stepped closer. "You mean I can't be controlled?" For a moment her composure slipped and I saw the flicker of anger. "Careful," she said quietly. "You're poking at things you don't understand." "Then explain them to me," I challenged. He didn't. She just turned on her heel and left. But the way her hands shook when she grabbed her purse told me everything. She was scared. That night, I sat at my desk and started a folder labeled reclamation. Inside went every email, every screenshot, every conversation I could piece together about the company, the trust, and Madison's manipulations. I wasn't ready to burn it all down, not yet. But I was building the matchbox. And soon I was going to strike the first flame. When Madison left my apartment that night, I knew I'd crossed a line I couldn't step back from. And honestly, I didn't want to. For weeks I kept collecting pieces. Conversations, financial records, little inconsistencies. My reclamation folder was starting to look like a time bomb. But a bomb is useless if it just sits there. You have to decide when to detonate. The opportunity came faster than I expected. My father was hosting a shareholders' dinner at the firm's headquarters. Normally I'd never be invited. I was the family's artsy disappointment. not part of the business. But this year they needed to fill a seat after one of the minor investors backed out, and Madison, in her arrogance, told them to give it to me. I don't think she realized what a mistake that was. The night of the dinner, I walked into that glass-walled boardroom like I owned it. The city skyline glittered behind the floor-to-ceiling windows, and the table gleamed with polished silverware and crystal glasses. Madison was already working the room, laughing too loudly, a hand on every shoulder. I waited until after the main course, when the wine was flowing and everyone was just loose enough to let their guard down. Then I leaned forward and asked my father in front of the entire table, a simple question. Dad, can you explain why the Eastbrook account transferred $1.2 million to a dissolved company last quarter? The room went dead silent. You could practically hear the clink of Madison's fork hitting her plate. My father frowned. Where did you hear that? I've been catching up on our family business, I said, meeting Madison's eyes across the table. She jumped in immediately. It's nothing, just a routine restructuring. Except, I cut in, the company it was sent to doesn't exist. Which means either our accounting department is grossly incompetent, or someone's hiding something. A few shareholders exchanged glances. The seed was planted. Madison's smile was tight, her voice sharp. Stella, this isn't the time or place. Seems like exactly the time and place, I said. These are the people whose money is at stake, aren't they? The rest of the evening was chaos wrapped in polite conversation. Madison kept trying to steer things back to small talk, but the damage was done. Whispers followed her around the room like smoke. The next morning I got a call from Aunt Ruth again. What on earth happened last night? Half the board is asking questions now. Madison's furious. Good. But with the board's curiosity came something else. Retaliation. By the end of the week I was hit with a formal letter from the family's attorneys, warning me to cease and desist any actions that could harm the company's reputation. Might have scared the old me. But this time it just confirmed I was on the right track. Because when powerful people start threatening you, it means you've finally found the nerve they've been hiding. The letter from the attorneys was the clearest sign yet. I'd shaken the tree and the fruit was starting to fall. 4 days I half expected someone to show up at my door. Instead the silence stretched. Too quiet, too calculated. It wasn't until Sunday night that I got the call. It was my mother. Her voice was thinner than I remembered, each word careful, almost fragile. Stella, can you come by tomorrow? We need to talk. Just the two of us. A dozen possibilities ran through my mind. A trap, a lecture, another attempt to put me in my place. So I went. When I walked into the house, she was sitting in the sunroom, the one with the white wicker furniture and the endless view of the garden. But she looked smaller somehow, the crisp edges of her presence dulled. Sit, she said. No pleasantries. No tea. Just sit. For a moment she didn't look at me. Her eyes were on the garden. You've been making quite a mess, she finally said. I almost laughed. A mess? Or just making things visible? Her lips twitched, not quite a smile. You've always been more like me than I let myself admit. And I didn't protect you the way I should have. I wasn't ready for that. Not from her. You cut me out, I said, my voice sharper than I meant. You let Madison. She raised a hand. Your sister is ambitious and careless. But your father, he listens to her more than he listens to me. Always has. I stayed silent. She took a folded envelope from the table and pushed it toward me. This is my last change to the trust. Effective immediately. My shares, and full voting rights in the company, go to you. I blinked. What? Her gaze finally met mine. You wanted a seat at the table, Stella? Now you'll have the whole thing. Use it well. It took a moment for the weight of her words to sink in. She was giving me control. Not just over my inheritance, over the entire family's financial core. Why? Asked finally. Her eyes softened just barely. Because I see now that you're the only one willing to fight for more than yourself. The next week was a storm. Madison found out within hours of the paperwork being filed. She came to my apartment red-faced, spitting words like betrayal and power grab. But this time I didn't flinch. It's not a power grab, I told her calmly. It's a reclamation. The board was stunned. My father avoided me for weeks. And the family group chat went eerily silent. But I didn't need their approval anymore. I had my seat, my voice, my name back in ink where it belonged. For the first time I understood something. They hadn't erased me because I was weak. They'd erased me because they were afraid I'd realize how strong I could be. And now, they were right to be afraid. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed my story, don't forget to like and hit subscribe. You will also enjoy other stories on AJ Family Drama. Until next time, bye.